Canucks reporter, Rinkwide's Jeff Paterson, who took in the proceedings Friday morning from Rogers Arena. Hello, Jeff.
Hi, guys.
Were you expecting this? Did this catch you off guard? And a 3-year extension for a guy who's going to be 75 next month. What do you make of what the Canucks did re-signing President of Hockey Operations Jim Rutherford?
Yeah, to answer your first question, absolutely, it caught me off guard. Was here at the rink and recorded rink-wide after the game against Arizona and didn't expect that we'd be right back at Rogers Arena for a significant press conference with the owner sitting alongside the president of Hockey Ops. So, yeah, that did catch me off guard. And what I made of the events is there is a assuredness to Jim Rutherford in the way that he operates, a very quiet confidence, and he's got the Stanley Cups to prove it. And guys, there is something to be said about stability, and we've all worked in this market through a remarkably dark decade of mismanagement and overspending, and the way the hockey club handled COVID, and then a couple of coaching changes in quick succession, and they have done a nice job of just lowering the noise. There's always going to be issues around any professional sports team, particularly in a market like this one, and Andrei Kuzmenko is definitely an issue, but in terms of some of the broader issues around him, some of the off-ice situations, they've done a nice job of just lowering the temperature and the volume there and allowing the players to operate in the best conditions possible for them. And as a result, they're the first team to 30 wins in the National Hockey League. As we record this, they are on top of the National Hockey League standings. And so I do think it goes hand in hand with finally just having that synchronicity from the top down through the organization, something really they've been chasing for the better part of 10 years.
What do you make of the appearance of the owner, wanting to bask in the glow, no doubt, of the 12 months of serenity and stability?
Well, I guess there has to be somebody there alongside to make it formal that the president has himself a new deal. So when I found out that it was going to be Jim Rutherford's extension, I wasn't surprised. And I will say that, and we know that this is not Francesco Aquilini's favorite part of the job, but you're right, there was an element of, I think, just an ease knowing that darts weren't coming his way, given the type of season the hockey club has had to this point, and the fact that this was a good news announcement, that they have found a president with this experience, with the pedigree and the track record, and now they've extended him, and so he's on the job, hopefully, to see what he was brought here through to its ultimate conclusion. But, yeah, I mean, you see that Francesco puffed out the chest just a little bit because this team that he and his family own are having the season that they're having. So I guess my sort of biggest takeaway from his appearance was he seemed more at ease than in a lot of the previous ones, and we don't get a ton of access to him, obviously, but I think that just comes with the circumstances around the hockey club and where they sit in the overall standings.
Do you think Rutherford sees this extension out? And the poll question, is he the guy to deliver a cup to Vancouver?
I'm going to say sure, just because I want to cover a Vancouver Canucks Stanley Cup win, and I want to see the fan base that's been remarkably passionate and patient, too, for, so many years. I want to see them get the chance to celebrate. So hopefully it does happen sooner rather than later. They've taken some big strides this year, obviously. I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't say that with, confidence, but they've got this star power. They have surrounded the star power with players that are capable of holding up their own and in many cases overachieving this season. So, as we sit here approaching the All-Star break, I think the Vancouver Canucks have to feel like they could beat any team in the league on any given night. Now, 4 out of 7 in the playoffs is different matchup. The health of teams and what do those playoff rosters look like after the trade deadline and all those types of things. We can't answer those questions right here, right now, but I think the Canucks have legitimately put themselves in the conversation this year. Is it a perfect storm? Is it star players all leveling up and overachieving? Is it a bunch of roles having career years? Yeah. I mean, on a lot of fronts, yes, that's exactly what it is. That doesn't happen every year. And so I'm not going to project that this is the year, but do I think Jim Rutherford sees this out? Yeah. I asked him, what fuels him in the morning, and he said honestly, what else would I do? There are a lot of people at his age that would put it up and head for the beach somewhere. That's not how he's wired. And he talked about feeding off the competition, and he sees this as a challenge, and he loves that challenge. And so, yeah, I have no reason to think that with the strides that they've made here over the last 12 months, that he isn't excited to see what the next 12 months and the 12 months beyond that look like.
It was a terrific question and a great answer on his part. If there was one big takeaway outside of a couple of comments on the players, which we'll get to, and perhaps the practice facility as well, he talked about how there is risk in not improving a team as much as there is going out and spending the assets to bring in deadline acquisitions, and said that he and Patrick Allvin and their staff have been talking about this for a month. Jeff, it sounds to me like he's putting the market on notice. They're going to make a very big swing here and add as good a player as they can by the deadline. Did you interpret that similarly?
He's not the biggest man in stature, but he comes with reputation, and part of that is being a different kind of trader, Jim, than the last guy that oversaw this organization. So, yeah, I mean, I just sort of parsing what we've seen from other interviews recently, and then sitting in front of Jim Rutherford today, I think they feel like the players have held up their end of the bargain, and it's on management now to do whatever it can within its power without breaking the bank. I don't think you have to absolutely clear the cupboards for the next 5 to 10 years for this particular season. But again, it has sort of been this perfect storm coming together. Why wouldn't you want to support these guys? And as we watch for Canucks on a nightly basis right now, Lotto line playing out of this world, driven by Elias Pettersson. That third line, that's really the second line, continues to show up and produce on a nightly basis, but there are still gaping holes. And what do you do with that line that, not just not scoring, but getting scored? The lone goal against Arizona, Pia Suter, not a second line center, so certainly there's an opportunity to upgrade there. And the two Russians that, for whatever reason, it's just not happening. So, yeah, I think based on his reputation and his track record and what he, and I'm talking about Jim Rutherford, identifies as possibilities, I fully expect that they will step to the plate and take a sizable swing.
He did comment on both Pettersson and Kuzmenko, two guys that are in the crosshairs for different sorts of reasons right now. What did you make of his answers, his optimism perhaps around Pettersson, and did he tip any hand with regards to Kuzmenko in your eyes?
Yeah, I didn't think that there was a whole lot new there that hadn't been said before about Pettersson. They've put the ball in his court repeatedly now, and this was just another one where, I think whenever he's ready, they've made it abundantly clear that they too are ready, and it's not going to be a matter of cost. I think the owner sitting there, he has to recognize that, they're not going to grind over $100,000, that it's going to cost them a lot, and it's just a question of term and ultimately what Elias Pettersson wants to do. So I think it was more of the same in that regard. Yeah, I mean, if there was one grand takeaway when Jim Rutherford says Kuzmenko is going to score goals in the National Hockey League, whether it's here or elsewhere, I mean, how can you not sort of sit up and take notice? And I'm sure Andrei Kuzmenko and Dan Milstein would sit up and take notice there. This was a little bit different last night, guys. We have seen Andrei Kuzmenko benched for parts of games, and when the bench is shortened in third periods of tight games, he's not part of that. But he's always been a part of Power Play 1 when he's in the lineup. And, even if he's started a game lower in the lineup as a fourth line guy, still has maintained his spot on the first unit power play, save for a couple of games where they tried the two defensemen with Filip Hronek. But last night, that is as clear a benching as you can get when, he waves at Travis Dermott on the goal. Then he doubles down with the pass to nobody. Well, I guess it was to Clayton Keller, but just a brutal gaffe in his own zone in a tight game. And there you are with the Canucks in this one-goal game in the third period. Get a couple of power play opportunities, and he is parked and played 5 minutes and 23 seconds at 5-on-5 in the hockey game. This one felt a little different, and in the light of day, they recall Linus Karlsson. They didn't have an extra forward, but now they do. So we'll have to see what happens against the Leafs on Saturday. And is Andrei Kuzmenko in the lineup, or is this just the next chapter in a story that doesn't feel like to end particularly well for him in his time as a Vancouver Canuck?
There was optimism about a practice facility. So is this going to be the last season in which we see you in these climbs for an optional?
Well, if they're going to build one themselves, I would say that's going to be a few years down the line, and they'll only be in, but then said these things take time. We've heard that there is perhaps a plan with UBC to sort of spend some money there and partner and build whatever they need in the way of locker room and training facilities, but use one of the sheets of ice out there at the Winter Sports Center. That would be a quicker resolution, obviously, to get them a practice facility they call their own, with so many guys that either live in the downtown core or on the west side. That one geographically and logistically would make a lot of sense. So, they continue to remain confident, but they are remarkably short on details, and that was, I thought, more of the case here. So, I'll take them at face value that it is a priority for them. They've been talking about it an awful lot, but I walked away from that not thinking that I knew a whole lot more than I did when I walked into the room.
No, I was just glad to hear Francesco say it's needed. We have the record. We have the owner on record now saying it's needed. Just back on Pettersson for a second. And good honesty on Rutherford, talking about how important he is. And I was struck by the one comment where he said, come the off season, things will get a lot more serious. Elias was asked by Farhan Lalji today with regards to the extension, if anything has changed regarding his desire to negotiate, given the on-ice success, and Elias answered flatly, wait until the end of the year. At this stage of the game, do you just think this file goes dormant and it picks up again after the Canucks are eliminated from the playoffs or lift the Stanley Cup?
That's my sense now, and I think given the season had, and particularly these last couple of weeks, you could understand why Elias Pettersson would want to park it. He's done enough that the bottom's not falling out for him, and dare I say, he gets injured and can't play for a chunk of nothing's changed. He has proven that he is a frontline player, and he is back what he did with 102 points last year, and certainly is on pace for that kind of season again. Those players don't come along very often. He has set the market. Do I have the dollar figure? No. Does he, or does the hockey club? No. They've got to come to an agreement in that regard, but I think the framework is pretty close. It's not going to come to money, and I think Elias Pettersson's a fairly sensitive guy, and I don't say that in a negative way. I think he recognizes that we're talking about money that's beyond his wildest dreams, and if it is truly about the team right now and just trying to continue what they have done through 45 incredible games, you can see why he would want to park that discussion, focus on the task at hand. He hasn't allowed the contract situation to be any kind of distraction for him. And so, I'm surprised that he hasn't come out publicly and just said, look, I am not talking about this until the season. Just put a blanket over it and allow him just to be a hockey player for the next 4 months or whatever it turns out to be for the Vancouver Canucks. So, people are chipping away at him, and to hear a response like that, I think that backs up this idea that this file isn't moving particularly far between now and whenever the Canucks are eliminated, or if there's a parade in downtown Vancouver.
Yeah, and of course the club has gotten its messaging out now too, from the owner all the way down. I did think it was a little telling that Francesco jumped in voluntarily to help out. Well, also because, when things have gotten tough with players in the past, Francesco has intervened. He tried to convince Ryan Kessler to stay here to no avail at one point. Marvelous stuff, Jeff. We look forward to Rink Wide after the matinee Saturday against the Toronto Maple Leafs, and we'll catch up with you next week on Saturday.
Looking forward to it. It's always fun when the Leafs are in town. Austin Matthews, certainly worth the mission right now, the way he and Pettersson are going. And, of course, the Leafs got the better of the Canucks back in mid-November, so I'm sure the Canucks remember that. They're playing a little bit better now, and certainly their star power is going. So should be fun for a national television audience. Looking forward to it, and looking forward to doing a Rink-Wide episode afterwards as well.
This great clip brought to you by, wait for it, Great Clips. It's going to be great.